All right, we are live in beautiful, sunny Florida. And today, fight fans, we are going to be breaking down UFC 226, Miocic versus Cormier in Las Vegas, Nevada, man. I am so excited. International Fight Week always comes through. We got a pair of amazing title fights, champ versus champ, super fight, number one featherweight in the world versus number two featherweight in the world. And I mean, just looking at this card, absolutely stacked from top to bottom, man. I can't wait, man. And it couldn't be any better because this card actually happens to be on my birthday. Can't wait for Saturday. Can't wait for my bets. I do have two plays for UFC 226. And guys, the Roundtable is back. I am joined by Justin of UFC Bro Picks. Happy to have him on, one of my good friends. And then I got Max returning. Of this, I believe, my third time having Max on. He always comes through with some sharp picks. The guy knows his stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited. Justin, how you doing, man? What do you think of this card? And how you doing, brother?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I had my breakdowns a couple of days ago, and I'm just in Vegas right now, soaking that 120-degree weather. And it's a good card, man. It's probably the best card this year for sure. So I'm ready. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. Max, how you doing? What do you think of this card, bro?
Feeling great. Like you said, Kelton, couldn't be more excited. The top of the card, 2 championship fights. What more can you ask for?
Yeah, man. I mean, just looking at the prelims of this card, I mean, would it be all that surprising if Paulo Costa versus Uriah Hall was a Brazil fight night main event? I would be okay with that for a fight night main event, and we got it headlining the prelims. Even looking at those Fight Pass prelims, I mean, the very always exciting Lando Fanata is the curtain jerker of this card. Gilbert Burns versus Dan Hooker in the Fight Pass prelims, man. I mean, I'm so excited for this. Mike Perry versus Paul Felder, although it's a very new fight and not a lot of time to think about it. I'm so stoked for that. And of course, I'm going to be saving it for later in the card, but I have 2 of my more confident plays I've really ever had. And if you guys are wondering about the tough finale, I will be going live solo tomorrow night to break down that card. So yeah, UFC 226 tonight, man. Excited to talk. What do we got? We got 12 fights here. So me, Max, Justin going to be breaking down all 12 of these amazing fights. And let's just get right into it, man. So first fight of the night, we got Lando Venata, minus 185, taking on Drakkar Klose, plus 160. I'm going to let Justin start with this one.
Yeah, this is a good fight, dude. Honestly, I can see this fight being on the main card of a FX card, You got Venata, who in my opinion is a very good striker, He does gas out. That's my only problem here, because we have seen him gas out. But I mean, Klose, in my opinion, he just hasn't looked that good. I mean, the fight with Mark could have been. I think Mark could have won that fight, to be honest. And then against Tamer, he didn't really do anything, to be honest. But I mean, Tamer won every round. But I mean, it's not like it was like a war. Tamer wasn't pushing the pace either. But Klose just really didn't throw anything. And then Klose in his debut against Devin Powell. I mean, you can't even put the worst guy in the division away. He does have good wrestling, though, for sure. Trains at a good camp. He has a good chin. I just think that Lando, has the better striking. If he gasses, though, if he gets out of the first, I'll be worried. I think Klose could take over. But my pick's going to be Lando. I think Lando's going to get a first-round KO. I think he's too good on the feet for Klose. But we'll see what happens.
Max?
Yeah, fun fights kick off the night, that's for sure. Groovy Lando Venata, he had that awesome head kick of John McDessie back at UFC 206 in 2016, but since then I haven't seen as much improvement. He had that close fight with David Teemer that he lost, had that kind of fire fight with Bobby Green, called it draw. Drakkar Klose, he's a pretty measured guy. He's aggressive, but he's controlled. He hasn't shown the ability to finish, but I do like his ability to close the distance here and keep it clinched up, not letting Venata get off at range and fire off those unique strikes that he has. Both guys trained in a great camp, Jackson Wink versus the MMA Lab. But I'm going to go with the dog here. I'll take Drakkar Klose. I think it's going to be a close fight, but I'll go split decision, Drakkar Klose, and the underdog catches in the first fight of the night.
Yeah, man, this is a close fight in my opinion, a really well-matched fight. I think it's really great matchmaking there by Sean Shelby. So, man, the first thought I had is Drakkar's chin good enough to hold up against that early first-round bursting Lando Venata? Because Lando Venata is an absolute madman in that first round. One does not simply drop Tony Ferguson. What did he drop? About 3-4 times in that first round on short notice. Lando Venata comes out as a madman. Even that fight against Tamer, the first round was arguably the closest. And I actually took Drakkar Klose as a dog in his last fight against David Tamer. Obviously not the best pick in the world, but I kind of just assumed he would have been able to mix up the leg kicks and the takedowns. But fact is, David Tamer is an absolute savage and possibly even a top 10 lightweight. The guy is unbelievable and has been working on, the holes in his own game. And so I don't know, man. I definitely feel like this is in the right direction for Drakkar Klose. This is definitely a step down from David Tamer. I just kind of feel like Lando Venata's striking will be too much. I didn't see. I felt like Drakkar Klose could have made that Tamer fight a lot closer if he just would have done more. And that's the thing. I don't really trust Drakkar Klose to do a whole lot here, man. I wanted to take the dog shot on him here, but based on the last fight, based on his performances, I'm just not overly impressed with the guy. Yeah, he went in there and smoked Devin Powell. Didn't finish him. Devin Powell's got a chin on him, but he smoked him. And then the Diakese fight, that was close. It could have gone either way for sure. But I don't know, man. This is a tough pick. Part of me feels like Lando Venata will have a good first round. Then Drakkar will out-wrestle a slightly gassed Lando in the second and third. But I'm going to go with Lando Venata via a very greasy, close split decision. I'll say he takes rounds 1 and 2 via outpointing him via strikes for sure. So I'm going to go with Lando Venata, but I think if anything on the betting side of things, Drakkar Klose probably has the more value on him from the betting side. When it comes to DraftKings, I don't see Drakkar Klose getting a finish here. I think if he wins, it's by decision. And there's always that chance Lando Venata comes out with a first-round KO. So actually in DraftKings, I prefer Lando Venata, whereas from the betting perspective, I think a dog shot on Drakkar Klose isn't so bad. So I'm going to go with Lando via 29-28 split decision here. Next fight of the night, obviously this is probably the one that does not belong. We got Jamie Moyle minus 210 taking on Emily Whitmire plus 175. I'm not going to lie, I didn't look into it too much. I looked into a little bit when I saw that extremely high line on Jamie Moyle. What was it? I believe she opened like minus 350 on Jamie Moyle. So when I saw that line, of course I went and did some research on Emily Whitmire, because who doesn't want to fade Jamie Moyle at minus 350? But the fact is, as low level as Jamie Moyle is, she's been in there with the better fighters, has the better wins, arguably is better everywhere. So maybe that minus 350 price tag isn't so far off. That, I mean, the books could be something, they could be onto something there. But still, man, in a low level women's fight at that kind of crazy price, I definitely would say the value is with Emily Whitmire. But I'm going to say Jamie Moyle probably lands takedowns in this fight, maybe even outstrikes the girl. So I'm going to go Jamie Moyle via a 30-27. Max, what about you?
Yeah, one of the better nicknames in all women's MMA, the Love Boat, Jamie Moyle. I love that. I will say she's shown a little bit of steady improvement since her time on The Ultimate Fighter season 23. However, in her last fight against Viviane Pereira, pretty much beaten to the punch every time. Emily Whitmire trains at a good camp, Extreme Couture, but really we haven't seen all that much out of her. Yes, she did win a fight on The Ultimate Fighter season 26, but since then has been pretty much dominated. The one fight on the show against Roxanne Modafferi and her UFC debut against Jillian Robertson. But Moyle just seems to be the more well-rounded fighter here. She's training a Team Alpha Male for this camp. I think she cruises to a decision victory. As much as I'm tempted to take that plus money on Emily Whitmire, I just don't see it.
Justin?
Yeah, I didn't really look into this fight that much. I do think that Moyle has pretty decent hands, you know. She's definitely the faster striker, the better striker. I think she can get takedowns too, but I mean, Whitmire, she has a decent ground game, but I mean, I don't know. It's one of those, like, I'm going to pick Moyle, but I'm not confident. You know, I'm not going to play the minus 350 or whatever it is now. Even DraftKings, I would stay away for DraftKings too. But I got Moyle.
For sure. So next fight of the night, man, this is a very intriguing one, and even more intriguing that we had such huge line movement on it very, very recently. We got Dan the Hangman Hooker minus 130 taking on Gilbert Burns plus 110, and I'll let Max start out with this one.
Yeah, this is a wild one. Both guys are looming right outside the top 15 at 155 pounds. Early in his career, Gilbert Burns, really known for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu pedigree. Recently, it's been the improvement in his striking game, working under Henry Hooft. I mean, the back-to-back knockouts of Dan Moret and Jason Sago speak for themselves. Daniel Hooker, on the other hand, super long and rangy, and he's put together some nice highlight reel finishes as well. Ross Pearson, Jim Miller, the submission over Mark DeCasey. I think in this fight for Burns, he really needs to get to that, back to that wrestling and grappling pedigree. He has quite a selection of top grapplers in that camp, guys like Kamaru Usman, Vicente Luque, Desmond Green. I think those guys can really help him into developing a good game plan against Daniel Hooker, where Hooker needs to keep his range in those measured shots that he's been firing off. He's shown a really improved fight IQ. It's a really tough fight to call, and I could really see it going either way. I will take Daniel Hooker by split decision, and I think this is going to be a fight of the night candidate.
Justin?
Yeah, I agree with him, man. This is honestly one of the toughest fights to call. I've been going back and forth. Initially, I was picking Hooker, but after I watched tape, I think I'm going to go with Burns by sub, but, I mean, I'm not confident at all. He has to use his grappling here, because if he doesn't, he's going to get picked apart. For sure, he might even get knocked out. Hooker's looked really good at 155. You know, honestly, both of them haven't really beaten anybody impressive. I know Gilbert beat Cowboy, but, I mean, he was getting his ass kicked that whole fight. And I guess, Mark's, I mean, decent, I guess. But, I mean, Jim Miller's, definitely going to retire soon. Ross Pearson, I mean, I think Ross Pearson might have won the first round, to be honest. But Pearson's, he's going to retire too. But I think Hooker's just, too much on their feet for him. I think that he definitely has more tools, but I think Gilbert Burns might have the more power. But I think Burns is going to have to get that takedown. I think he might actually hand Dan Hooker his third submission loss, because I know Dan Hooker's, it's hard to take him down, but Jason Knight took him down too, 145. But then again, you could say the whole thing that Hooker's having a bad weight cut, which he was. But I just think this is a good fight. I mean, one of the best fights tonight, and I've been going, it's so tough to call, like he was saying, but I think Burns is going to get him down and tap him out, because I don't know. I just think that jiu-jitsu is going to be a little too much for Dan Hooker, but we'll see. So, yeah, final prediction, I got Gilbert Burns by sub.
Yeah, man, I've been going back and forth on this fight, and ultimately, I'd say I agree with the money that just came on in Gilbert Burns, man. I mean, he was about plus 140 when somebody dropped a bathtub full of money on him. And I definitely understand it, man. So both guys have been improving. Both guys have been looking better than ever. I'm so glad Dan Hooker took that move up to 155, definitely depleting his body there at 145. He was one of the biggest fighters there. You continuously see these guys come up weight classes and look amazing. Gilbert Burns, on the other hand, it's obviously his striking that's been improving. And typically when guys go out there and train with Henry Hoof, their striking improves a lot, man. So I definitely think Dan Hooker is the better striker of the two here, but Gilbert Burns, I do think that his striking is good enough to where he can land some good shots and put out those shots to where he can set up the takedowns with the strikes. So, and Gilbert Burns, obviously amazing jiu-jitsu, but I'm not convinced his wrestling is so great. I don't think he's as good as like a Damian Maia, to where Damian Maia is so good at getting it to the grappling. I think Gilbert Burns, most of the time, I don't want to say he gets lucky, but he definitely ends up in a lot of good spots to where he wants it. So I definitely think Gilbert Burns needs to pressure Dan Hooker here, because Dan Hooker, typically he loses to those pressure guys like the Maximo Blanco fight, the Jason Knight fight. You got to put pressure on this guy. And I think if Gilbert Burns puts pressure on this guy smartly, don't get wild, of course, put pressure on this guy, throw strikes, have confidence in strikes. I actually think I'm going to go with the dog here. I'm going to go with Gilbert Burns. I think he gets this fight down to the mat eventually, and he ends up snatching one of those very long limbs of Dan Hooker. So I'm going to go Gilbert Burns. I'm going to say he gets it done by second round submission.
Wait, one thing I want to mention.
Sure.
Sorry, one thing I want to mention is that I'm pretty sure that Burns is taking down every opponent too.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure I saw that. So I mean, if he's smart, he's going to go for the grappling, because, like I mentioned, on the feet, I mean, it's not like Hooker's like blows him out of the water. I just think Hooker has the advantage, but hopefully he goes for the takedown.
I do hope he goes for the takedown. I do hope that he sets it up with the strikes first, because Dan Hooker, that amazing Muay Thai, I feel like if Gilbert Burns shoots away from 10 feet away, Hooker could catch him with that knee, knock him out cold. That wouldn't surprise me at all. So Gilbert Burns just has to have confidence in his striking to be able to set up the takedowns. And with his recent victories, I think he will carry that confidence and sub Dan Hooker here. So, yeah, man. Moving on to the next fight, we got this is another good one, man. We got Curtis Millender, minus 165, taking on Max Griffin, plus 145. Justin, I heard you have a play here, man, so I'll let you start out with this one.
Yeah, man, I got to play Melender at I believe minus 160. I have like two different plays on it. Like I first bet it, I think 2.5 units at like minus 160. Then the rest was at I think minus 165. But yeah, man, this is a really good matchup, I think, from Wonder. Like, he doesn't have to worry about the takedown. I know Max Griffin took down Mike Perry, but I mean, I don't think the guy has the grappling to take down. I mean, even if he takes on Wonder, I think he can get right back up. I feel like a guy like Luke or maybe like a better wrestler is gonna have, Wonder's gonna have some problems for sure because his losses are getting taken down, getting tapped out. But I think it's a striker versus striker matchup. Max impressed me last fight for sure. I didn't think he was gonna beat Perry. I don't think anyone thought that he was gonna beat Mike Perry, but I just think Wonder has too much tools on the feet. I think he's a better striker. He fights super long. I like his counter game for sure. He lets you, go forward, and he picks you apart, man. And we saw the fight with Thiago Alves. I mean, I don't think a lot of people saw that either. I bet him at like plus 150, and he smoked him, dude. I mean, the only time he was in trouble, I think, was when he went for that guillotine when he got taken down. But I mean, other than that, dude, he coasted that fight. But I just think that he's, Max Griffin's a tough guy. He's not a jobber by any means. The guy is a good fighter. But I just think that Wonder, like I mentioned, has too many tools on the feet, and he's going to fight long. So I got Wonder. I think he's gonna win a 30-27 decision. I don't think he's going to knock him out.
Yeah, man. So I completely underestimated Max Griffin and his fight against Mike Perry. I was there live. Unfortunately, I was very depressed about it, but I was very impressed with his performance, man. He fought a flawless fight, man. He fought perfectly. It wasn't really up until the third round where Perry started to get things going. And Max Griffin, one thing about him, he's very good fight IQ. I mean, the guy made his UFC debut against Colby Covington, just to speak on the kind of confidence and heart the guy has. Max Griffin is no slouch whatsoever. Thing is, I think he's out-techniqued here. I think Curtis Melender is the much better striker, and I could absolutely see him going out here, outstriking Max Griffin for 3 rounds. Thing is, I do think that Max Griffin has the fight IQ advantage, and he knows what he needs to do to win. I've seen Melender do some questionable things. Max Griffin, he packs a punch, man. Melender, he's good offensively for sure, but I've seen him leave some holes in his striking defense. Max can pack a punch. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Max landed that big shot, or I'd be a little bit more surprised if he were to go out there and outstrike Melender. I don't think that'll happen. I don't want to say it's knockout or bust situation for Max Griffin, but that's what I tend to think here, that if Max Griffin wins this fight, it'll probably be my knockout. But I'm going to go with Curtis Melender, man. I think he's huge for the division. He has the striking advantage, and he's going to make it look pretty, man. He's going to use that reach and simply outstrike the guy, and not much more to go into it. I don't really see this fight hitting the mat. Probably going to be a good old kickboxing match. So I'm going to go with Curtis Melender via 30-27, and I do think Justin cashes on that one. Max, what do you think?
Well, right away, I also think that's a great price, and props to you, Justin, for catching that line. Curtis Melender, he's turned his career around since kind of getting washed out of Bellator a few years ago. He's very measured. He picks his shots well. I also noticed, Kelton, that he does kind of do some questionable things, leaves himself open a little bit. And Max Griffin, a high output, long rangey guy, we saw him beat Mike Perry to the punch. So, there is a chance he could do that just as well to Curtis Melender. But the way this guy's been fighting with that patience and really that precision with his strikes, especially with his knees and kicks, I got to think this is his fight all day. And I'm going to go with another head kick knockout second round for Curtis Melender.
All right, so moving on to the next fight of the night, man. This is indeed my first play of the night. We got Rafael Assunção, minus 165, taking on Rob Font, plus 145. So, yeah, man, I am just going to come out and say I do have 4 units on Rafael Assunção, minus 162, and faster at these lower weight classes, but I simply just don't see any signs of slowing down for Rafael Assunção. And looking at his record, yeah, he does win most of his wins by decision, but he came out in his last fight against a decent prospect in Matthew Lopez and starched the guy, one of Rafael's first knockouts in a very long time. So I tend to not believe that this guy is slowing down like others believe. I think Rafael Assunção might even at his age is in the prime of his career. And looking at Rob Font, a lot of people are high on Rob Font, and I do think Rob Font's an excellent fighter, and I will bet him against many guys in that bantamweight division, but I tend to think he's a little slightly overrated, and that's just me being honest. So, I mean, looking at his UFC wins, I mean, yeah, he's had an impressive start so far. He came in short notice, UFC debut against George Roop, knocked him out in the first round. George Roop is a chinny guy. Then came out against Joey Gomez. Joey Gomez no longer in the UFC, another chinny guy. Then lost to John Lineker. No shame in that. John Lineker's an amazing fighter. Then came out, knocked out Matt Schnell, another chinny guy coming up a weight class on short notice. Then he goes out there and subs Douglas Andrade. And we know anything about Douglas Andrade, he does have one of the most padded records in UFC history. And I don't want to say the guy's a fraud, but definitely suspect jiu-jitsu there. And I think that was before Douglas Andrade found the right doctor for that Marlon Chito Vera fight. Completely different guy than the Douglas that fought Marlon. So, and that's probably Rob Font's best win is Douglas Andrade. And then you could argue it's Thomas Almeida, but again, he knocked out Thomas Almeida, another very chinny guy. And then he had that loss against Pedro Munoz. Pedro Munoz actually rocked Rob Font on the feet, and then Rob Font, I don't know what it was. You don't dive for takedowns against Pedro Munoz, and he paid the price there in the first round, got submitted quick. And honestly, man, you can't really use MMA math. I don't believe in that at all. But I mean, looking back at similar matchups, I tend to believe that Rafael Assunção was better than Pedro Munoz everywhere. I believe Rafael is the better boxing than Munoz, and he has the better jiu-jitsu than Pedro Munoz. Well, maybe that's close. Pedro's got a nice little guillotine, but man, this is just, I mean, and that was a very recent matchup. That was less than a year ago against Pedro Munoz there, and I just think it's too soon for the guy. So I actually think Rafael Assunção can come out here and
What happened?
I don't know. Did you lose him too?
Yeah. Damn. Oh my god, that's crazy. I thought I lost both of you guys. I thought it was me,
No.
but yeah. That's
No, I
weird.
think it's Kelton.
It happens to my YouTube channel sometimes too. I don't know, just like my computer is super slow, so but I mean, maybe it's his computer. I'm not really sure what it is. I feel bad too. 'Cause that's his first play. I wonder if he's gonna pop back on or what. If we're gonna have to get another invite. Honestly, he might have to do it without us. You just left the call right now. Yeah, shit.
We'll probably jump back in. You're still muted. No, you're muted. I think it's on your actual Hangouts. It's showing the microphone slash.
All right. How about now?
Oh, yeah, you're good now.
Okay, cool.
you guys do the Assunção Font fight.
No, we're trying to figure out what happened.
That was weird, man.
We are live.
Okay, well, do you want to finish your pick or?
Yeah, it's your
Yeah.
play too. Yeah.
Well, if I can get my dang webcam working. Sorry about that, guys. The perks of doing a live podcast. We are in here. We are here in beautiful sunny Florida, but it's also very stormy sunny Florida. So
Oh, that's
the
why. That's definitely why.
power tends to turn off sometimes. But I think if I can get my webcam back on here, but I actually think Rafael Assunção is going to go out here and surprise a lot of people on the feet. I think he has some underrated boxing. I mean, the guy just outstruck. I don't want to say outstruck, but it was a very close fight with Marlon Moraes. He went out and beat Marlon Moraes via points on the feet. The same guy that just KO'd Jimmy Rivera in less than 30 seconds. I mean, I think that people picking Font here are kind of notioning to the idea that Rafael Assunção was on the tail end, blah, blah, blah. I just don't see any signs of slowing down to make it short and sweet. I think Rafael Assunção outstrikes Rob Font here. I think he out-grapples him. We'll see if Rob Font makes another mental mistake and shoots in for a takedown against a black belt in jiu-jitsu like he did against Pedro, because I think he'll be going to sleep if that's the case. So, yeah, I got 4 units on Rafael Assunção to win somewhere around 2.5. Justin, what do you think of this fight?
Yeah, I'll keep this pretty short because you basically said a lot of stuff and said everything correct. I do think that it's a good fight for Assunção. I think it's KO or bust for Rob Font. Font's a good fighter. He's definitely a top 10 guy in my opinion. But I mean, it's mental with him, dude. Just I don't know what it is. Like, why would you shoot him against Pedro? I mean, he was losing on the feet, but I mean, still, I mean, why would you shoot him against one of the guys who has one of the best heat teams in the division? Yeah. I think Assunção is a very good fighter. He is getting older though, so I mean, he could, like start the decline pretty soon. But I think he's, better everywhere. To be honest, I just think Font might have more power. But let's be honest, Assunção has a pretty good chin too. He's only been knocked out once. That was a long time ago. I don't think Font's gonna knock him out.
And it was against a lightweight.
Yeah, I actually think Assunção could get takedowns too. To be honest, I mean, but
Yeah.
he's probably gonna do what he always does and just outstrike him. So I got Assunção. I don't think he's going to finish him, but I think he's going to win a pretty clear cut, 30-27.
Max?
Yeah, Assunção's that bantamweight that everyone seems to keep forgetting about. I don't know how he's not fighting, a Dominic Cruz or John Lineker or Jimmy Rivera, one of the top 5 guys. Instead, he gets Rob Font, who's at the bottom half of the rankings. But remember, I mean, like you said, Kelton, he holds a win over Marlon Moraes, and I believe that was in the last year and a half or so. Font's a fun fighter to watch. He's pretty technically crisp on the feet. He works well with Mark Delagrati. But Assunção, just a very capable striker in his own, and he's proven that he can handle strikes for strike with top 5 guys. Assunção stays very busy on the feet. He gets off first. He puts Font on his heels. If he doesn't finish him, then he cruises to a unanimous decision victory.
All right, so moving on to the newest made fight of this card. Like I mentioned, we haven't had a whole lot of time to digest it, but for sure, you have to think that it's going to be fireworks. So we got Paul the Irish Dragon Felder, minus 150, taking on Mike Platinum Perry, plus 130. And I'm going to let Max start out with this one.
Pure violence when I think of this fight. Felder's quite large for 155, and Perry's actually fought at lightweight earlier in his career, so I don't foresee the size discrepancy being too big here. I think Felder mixes it up nicer. He has a better variety of strikes, kicks, elbows. Perry might be a little bit more sound with his punching power. As we know, Mike Perry can go to war, and he won't ever quit. We saw that, on display against numerous opponents, but especially against Santiago Ponzinibbio last December. It'll be interesting to see how Mike Perry bounces back, and also his first fight under the Jackson Winklejohn banner. Also, this is his 3rd fight in 6 months. Both of those previous 2 fights, he did take pretty bad beatings in. So I like Felder in this one. I think Felder takes a unanimous decision.
Justin?
Yeah, dude, this is definitely the toughest fight for me to call on the entire card. I was having trouble making a pick on my show. I picked Perry, but I mean, I'm not confident at all. Like, honestly, I would never play it. DraftKings, no way. I just think he has more power. I know that Paul Felder definitely has way more tools in the feet. He definitely throws more. Just the thing with Paul Felder is you don't know if Felder's going to show up, but Max was saying something that's really, relevant is that he has taken 3 fights in the past 6 months. He got his ass kicked against Ponzi. He got smoked last fight against Max Rippon. I mean, his chin, he has a good chin, but I mean, Felder could touch it, to be honest. But the thing with Felder is I don't know, like the guy's good, but he has looked a lot better at Rufus. Just I don't know if Felder's gonna show up because the thing is he doesn't like getting hit either. It's gonna be a straight up war. I don't know. Like it's just one of those fights that I really don't know, but I think I'll just go with Perry just because I think he has more power. But I don't know, man. It's a toss up in my opinion.
So I'm a big fan of Perry, man, and I'm sure you guys all know that. I mean, he's from my state. He's a Florida boy just like me. I'm a huge fan of his fighting style, huge fan of the guy's highlight reel. I mean, how can you – I mean, I understand if you don't like Mike Perry on a personal level just based on some of the things he said, but, I mean, as a fighter, how can you not be a fan of this guy? And like Max said, this fight is just pure violence. And – so obviously there's a lot of things with Mike Perry. Just looking at his record, obviously 100% of his wins are by KO. If there's ever been a definition of a KO or bust fighter, it's Mike Perry. But the thing is, the reason why Mike Perry is so good at being that KO or bust fighter, he has two very underrated attributes. He has very underrated cardio. The guy can go forever. And he has a very underrated chin. The guy can take a shot. I mean, like Justin said, we saw that in the Ponzi fight. Saw it in the Griffin fight. The guy can take a shot, and I think that's going to be. I think that's going to be key here against Paul Felder. Paul Felder coming up a weight class to 170. How is he going to hold up against 170's hardest hitting welterweight? I mean, we saw Paul Felder go in there and eat some insane strikes from the likes of Francisco Trinaldo. It took a doctor to go in there and stop that fight for Trinaldo. Paul Felder's got a chin on him. I just don't know if he's going to have a chin on him against the hardest hitting 170 pounder. Obviously, skill for skill wise, you got to think that Paul Felder is probably the more technical fighter. And if he goes out here and pulls a page out of Max Griffin's book, which I think there's a decent chance he can, I think he can win a decision over Perry here. Thing is, I just don't see Felder as that kind of guy. Paul Felder's that kind of guy that likes to go in there and put on a show, and I think that's going to be a huge mistake against Mike Perry. So, in my opinion, the way I see this fight going down, I think first round Paul Felder is going to end up listening to his coaches, and he is going to fight a smart, tactical, pretty fight and outstrike Perry that first round. But then once those fists get flying in that second round, I believe Perry does have the better cardio. I truly believe that. I think Paul Felder is going to not only end up slowing down, but kind of start going into Perry's game. And I think that's where he gets caught, man. I'm going to go with the underdog, Mike Platinum Perry here, to knock out Paul Felder in the second round. And he's going to add another one to that highlight reel. Now, I'm not going to be betting Mike Perry here. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, you know I was lucky enough to catch a free profit hedge. I got 2.5 units on Paul Felder, plus 115, 2.5 units on Mike Perry, plus 121. So it's a free $20 either way it goes. I'm going to sit back, enjoy the fight, take my easy $20. But I'm going to be rooting for Perry. I'm going to be picking Perry here, and I'll say he gets it done by second round KO. I forget. Did both of you guys go on this fight?
Yeah, I picked Perry. He picked
yeah, we're
Felder.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. Okay. So moving on to the next fight, man. This is the prelim headliner, and like I mentioned, I could easily see this fight headlining a fight night for sure. We got Paulo Costa, and he is, I believe, the biggest favorite on the card here, minus 430, taking on Uriah Hall, plus 345. I'll start out with this one, man. Uriah Hall, obviously, I mean, just looking at the records of these two gentlemen, I mean, I guess that would be one of the reasons to explain such the wide line. I mean, Uriah Hall, on his best day, he can go out there and knock out Gegard Mousasi. On his worst day, he can go out there and lose decisions to John Doomsday Howard. That 13-8 record definitely reflects the kind of inconsistent fighter Uriah Hall is. And then obviously you got Paulo Costa here, 11-0. You do know that first loss is going to be coming for old Borachinia, but I don't see it happening here, man. I think he goes out here and starches Uriah Hall and makes quick work of him. Uriah Hall can crack himself, man, and if he lands a counter shot, of course he can put away Borachinia. But you got to think he comes in here and probably starches him early. If it does get to that second or third round, I would not be opposed to anybody laying a nice little live bet on Uriah Hall because, I mean, looking at it, I mean, some of Uriah Hall's best wins have come past that first round. That the Christoph Jocko knockout and the Gegard Mousasi knockout. That this is another guy with underrated cardio. Uriah Hall is another guy that can go. Looking back at that Thiago Santos fight, Uriah Hall went out there and won the later rounds with a broken toe against the guy. Uriah Hall can go, man. So if it gets to that second or third round and you have a play on Borrachina, I'd be a little worried there. And I could see Uriah end up cracking him with some counter shot. But in all reality, I do see the most likely outcome here. Borrachina goes in there and starches the guy quick. So I think if Derek Brunson can go in there and knock Uriah Hall out in the first round, then a guy with a similar aggressive power style and Borrachina, who's maybe arguably even better than Derek Brunson, I think he can go out there and starch the guy. We've seen it before, so probably a nice stepping stone for the career of Borrachina. So I'll go with him via first round knockout. Justin, what about you?
There's a lot of weird fights in this card that honestly could go either way. I do think that Bor's gonna win. I think that the line's off for sure. With Hall though, you just don't know what Hall's gonna show up. He's way out. I don't know if he's gonna retire soon, but I mean he's definitely gonna be retiring probably the next couple of years. The guy had so much talent. He could have been the best fighter in the division. Just his, mental with him as well. I don't know, man, but I mean, his striking's really good. Like I mentioned, it's just you don't know how Hall's going to show up. Boris, has been looking very good. He hasn't beaten anybody impressive, in my opinion. Like we've talked about a lot in a couple of our chats, I do think his first is coming right around the corner. I think a guy with good cardio, good chin, good grappling could beat him. But Uriah Hall's chin is just not, I don't think that is there anymore, to be honest. So I think Boris is going to go out there and get a first round KO. But if he gets out of the first, all you live bettors out there should definitely bet on Uriah Hall. Because let's be honest, Hall has good striking still. But I mean, Bora's pressure and the guy's is so big for the division. And I mean, dude, he's good, man. But I don't think his first L is going to come here. So I got Bora.
Max?
Yeah, don't have too much to add that hasn't already been said. Borrachina starts fast and furious. Hall tends to get caught early. Both Gegard Mousasi fights, Chris Jocko, Derek Brunson, all caught him early. He has shown the ability to battle back, but Borrachina Costa, that's what he looks to do when he gets in there. Get in there, get the job done early. Borrachina gets it done. TKO round 1.
All right, so moving on to the next fight of the night, man. This is a fun one. We got Gokhan Saki minus 135 taking on Khalil Roundtree plus 115. There's been some money coming in on old Khalil Roundtree, so I'm gonna let Justin take this one.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you know me for a while, I've definitely been a big Khalil fan. I mean, if you watched my my breakdown a couple of days ago, you heard what I said about Khalil. I'm 2-1 betting him. Last fight was, in my opinion, was not a good fight. The guy did not look good at all. I mean, he lost to a guy that's definitely undersized for the division. He did pop, but Mikel definitely looked really good in that fight, striking wise. I mean, the guy's technical. The guy gets better throughout the fight. He has great cardio, something Saki does not have, something Khalil doesn't have either. They both have bad gas tanks, in my opinion. I don't think we have to worry about the takedown here, though. I think they're going to be slugging out in the feet. Saki has one of the best left counters I've ever seen in my life. He might have the striking advantage. I think he does, but I think it's close. I think Khalil has tools in the feet too. My thing here though is I don't think he's gonna go for the takedown, Khalil, but he could. I'm not gonna be surprised if he does because he changed camps. He's training with Kenny Johnson at Black House now with Joe Ban, all those guys over there. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I mean his ground game is not good. So I mean I don't know. I don't see him going for a takedown. If he does, we'll see. But I just think that if Saki doesn't get him out of there in the first, I think Khalil could definitely turn it up. I think he has the better cardio here. I know Khalil's gas tank's not that good. It didn't look good last fight, but I mean, Saki was in trouble last fight. In the first 2 minutes of the fight, he was gassing in that fight too against Frankenstein. And in my opinion, I think Khalil could beat Frankenstein. So I think it's going to be a straight-out war, man. It's a good fight. And just the value, I can't pass up plus 160 on Khalil, man. So I am definitely, I know, I was high in Khalil in the past. I do think that he's not, he's not what I thought he was. I don't think he's that good, but I think he's good enough to beat a guy like Saki here, a guy that's 1-1. He's been knocked out 8 times. I think Khalil has a pretty good chin too. I think so. I don't know if he can take a couple of those left counters that Saki has, but I think it's going to be a good fight, and I think Khalil's going to get it done. So I got Khalil by a first round knockout.
So I tend to think a lot differently about Khalil. Khalil Roundtree happens to be one of the guys on my fade list, and like I said, the line on Saki has gotten a lot better. But man, just makes some good points, and I'm gonna have to pass on Saki here. It was very close. He was super close to being my third play of this card, but I gotta pass, man. There, like Justin said, Khalil does have some advantages in this fight. I do think that Khalil does have a cardio advantage. Gokhan Saki, unfortunately, he's accustomed to those 3-minute rounds in kickboxing. The guy just holds a 1-1 MMA pro record. I mean, I believe both those fights haven't even gone out of the first round. So I do think, if anything, Khalil does have a cardio advantage, and he also does have a chin advantage, in my opinion. Like Justin said, Gokhan has been knocked out, I want to say 7 or 8 times in kickboxing. He got knocked out in his first pro MMA fight, I think back in 2004. And then even in this UFC debut against the Luis Henrique Frankenstein, he got rocked in that fight. But when you look at this fight skill for skill, man, and what kind of fight it'll be, it's going to be a striking match. Gokhan Saki is the much sharper striker. And if you're gonna have one big thing to one big flaw for Khalil Roundtree, man, I mean, go listen to the guy's interviews. I think there's a serious confidence issue. I feel like he's a mentally weak fighter, man. Even looking back to his days in the Ultimate Fighter, if anything, Khalil was one of the best fighters on that season. Unfortunately, he lost that fight against his teammate Corey Hendricks, I believe. And his reason of losing that fight is because the guys, my teammate and I, just didn't have any killer instinct. And I mean, listening to these interviews, it sounds like he's just missing that killer instinct. I do feel like Khalil has all the skills in the world. The guy's built like a brick shit house. He hits hard. He is a really good striker. I will say that, but this is a bad matchup for him, man. Gokhan Saki's the better striker, and I think he ends up catching Khalil here in the first round. But at that price, plus 160, I don't completely blame Justin. But I'm going to go with Gokhan Saki first round KO here. But if it, again, second fight in a row, if it goes to that second round and Khalil's a good live bet price, I wouldn't hate that either. So, Max, what do you think?
Yeah, Khalil Roundtree is agile, and for the first time, or one of the first times in his UFC career, he won't have to worry about getting smothered here. I mean, Gokhan Saki's not going to be shooting double legs, that's for sure. And that's when Khalil Roundtree does his best work. I mean, he's really athletic and he's fast for 205, but this will be the most polished striker he's ever faced. Frankenstein, Luis Henrique de Silva, but regardless, I can see this fight kind of, measuring out in the early parts of the round, but late in the second round, I see Gokhan Saki catching him with one of those clean left hooks, kind of at that point where technique overcomes fatigue, and he puts him away late in the second. But I like the price that Justin got Khalil Roundtree at 165. The line, this fight's much closer than that line suggests.
All right, so moving on to the next fight of the night, my second and final play of the night. It also happens to be my biggest straight play of the year, 6.2 units. So we got Michael Chiesa minus 155 taking on Anthony Showtime Pettis plus 135. I do have 6.2 units on Michael Chiesa minus 155. I'm just going to explain what goes into that. So first and foremost, this is mostly a fade on Anthony Pettis. I tend to think that this guy is not only broken mentally, but he is also broken physically. So looking back at his recent record here, so around the time where good old USADA showed up to the UFC, I'm not going to say anything specific whether or not he is a victim or not. I'll just say the decline in Anthony Pettis' skill set happened to happen around the same time as USADA. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say not only did USADA kill Anthony Pettis' mental confidence, that fight against Rafael Dos Anjos killed the mental confidence of Anthony Pettis. I mean, go and look back at that fight. Most people think Rafael Dos Anjos absolutely whooped Anthony Pettis, and he did win every round. But every time I go back and look at that fight, I'm like, oh, Pettis didn't do so bad. He had some good strikes in there. I mean, he lost every round, but he didn't look as bad as I remember. But then you look back at the Eddie Alvarez and Edson Barboza fight. gigantic lack of confidence from Anthony Pettis there. Just did not look great at all. So I do feel like USADA and Rafael Dos Anjos, that combination there, kind of killed the guy's confidence a little mentally. And then I tend to believe that this guy is broken physically now as well. It's not only just the horrible weight cuts he endured to make that 145-pound limit against Charles Oliveira, and then almost killing himself to make weight in that title fight against Max Holloway. I feel like the absolute beating that Max Holloway put on Anthony Pettis, that did a number on the guy. He came back, won against Jim Miller, and then again took an absolute beating against Dustin Poirier, and Anthony Pettis lost via TKO, via full mount advance. I mean, you can say freak injury all you want, but I mean, there's a reason why that happened. Anthony Pettis is just, and it's very sad to say, I mean, Anthony Pettis, I mean, the guy was the first UFC fighter on a Wheaties box, for Christ's sakes. I mean, this guy is amazing. He has a highlight reel like no other. I mean, the Showtime kick, I mean, the guy's a former champion, beat Benson Henderson twice, and those probably are Anthony Pettis' two best wins. But then of course, I started looking into the fight more, and I started going back even further and further into Anthony Pettis' career. And honestly, man, I really don't think this guy is even what he once was. I feel like even in his prime, he was a little overrated. So he came into the UFC debut against Clay Guida, lost a unanimous there, split decision win against Jeremy Stevens, knocked out a punching bag in Joe Lozon, body kick KO Donald Cerrone, who has a very weak body. Subbed Benson Henderson in the first round. I would argue that that's Anthony Pettis' best win, is that first round submission over Benson Henderson. But even looking back, I mean, I kind of think that Anthony Pettis just had Benson Henderson's number. Benson Henderson, I mean, to give Anthony Pettis credit, Benson Henderson was on like a 20-win, 2-loss streak when during the time he lost to Pettis twice. So I would say Benson is Pettis' best win for sure. I just kind of think that's one guy just has another guy's number there. Definitely not going to discredit that win. I just think he's better than Benson Henderson. But then in his first title defense against Gilbert Melendez, I thought he was going to go out there and absolutely smoke Gilbert Melendez, and he did submit him in the second round. But go back and watch that fight. He had to go through some shit. Gilbert Melendez, the striker, was out grappling Anthony Pettis there for a little while before Pettis got that choke. So honestly, man, I'm a huge fan of Pettis, but I think not only was he not that amazing in the first place, I think at this point now in his career, he's broken physically, he's broken mentally, and now he's going up against a guy who happens to be the style that he usually loses against, this huge, grindy grappler in Michael Chiesa. And not only is Michael Chiesa a huge, grindy grappler, I mean, this is a guy who has wins over James Vick, a TKO win over James Vick. Michael Chiesa has a first-round submission over Ali Quinta. He, I mean, has a win over Francisco Trinaldo, a submission win over Beneil Dariush. Now, Chiesa lost his last fight to Kevin Lee via a submission, and if anything, I would say Anthony Pettis' best path to victory here would probably be a submission. Kevin Lee is absolute phenom when it comes to the ability to get the fight down to the mat and use his jiu-jitsu. Kevin Lee is arguably one of the strongest fighters in that division. Anthony Pettis, at this point in his career, he does not quite have that strength or jiu-jitsu as a Kevin Lee. So, I mean, I think this is a big step down for Michael Chiesa from Kevin Lee when now he has this this version of Anthony Pettis in front of him. I think Chiesa comes in here and he can I think he can beat Anthony Pettis wherever this fight goes. I think he can outstrike the guy. I think more than likely he goes and presses him up against the cage, lands takedowns, and probably submits him towards the end of the fight. So 6.2 units on Michael Chiesa, minus 155 to win about 4 units. I think he smothers Pettis here, beats him up wherever the fight goes. And it's one of my more confident picks of the year. So, yeah, Michael Chiesa, I'll say third round submission. Max, what do you think?
I'm with you, Kelton. The blueprint's out there to beat Anthony Pettis, and Michael Chiesa has it. another thing you touched on that I really liked was that you don't know where he is mentally. At UFC 223, he was contacted to take the UFC lightweight title fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov because he was one of the only ones that made the championship weight and would be eligible. And for some reason, they weren't able to come to an agreement on it. How do you not jump at that opportunity? It's a title fight. Granted, you weren't training for a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov, but Pettis has been fighting forever. To me, that just was the final straw that Anthony Pettis is not the same fighter he used to be. I had the pleasure of speaking with Michael Chiesa when he was in Chicago for Bellator 198, cornering Sam Cecilia, and he is absolutely hungry to get back in there. You could just tell with the tone of his voice, his demeanor. He's really frustrated that, what the Kevin Lee fight, the mishap at UFC was 222 with the Conor McGregor incident. He's ready. He is absolutely ready and fired up to take this fight, and I don't think it's even close. I love the play you made, Kelton, your confidence there, too. I think you're going to walk away with a lot of units come Saturday night. He has a unanimous decision on the official prediction.
Justin?
Yeah, I also bet Chiesa, minus 164 units. You guys basically said everything, so I'm not going to, have it that long. But, yeah, I think it's a great matchup for Chiesa. I think he's, pretty good in the clinch as well on the feet. I think if he, chooses to strike with Pettis, it could get a little hairy because, Pettis has – he's still a decent striker, but, this is the ghost of Pettis. Chiesa's not stupid. He's going to go out there and do what he always does and go for the takedown. So, I think Chiesa just needs a pressure, too. He's a pressure fighter as well, and, Pettis does not like getting backed up against the fence. So, I think Chiesa's going to go out there and take him down at will and get a sub, in my opinion, in the first round. So I got Chiesa by first round submission.
All right, so moving on to a very fun heavyweight matchup here, man. We got Francis Ngannou, minus 380, taking on Derek Lewis, plus 315. I'm going to let Mac start out with this one.
Yeah, on paper, this is a lot closer than this betting line suggests. This has potential to be an epic slugfest. Francis Ngannou, no secret, some of the biggest power we've ever seen. But Derek Lewis, he doesn't really go quietly. He was finished by Mark Hunt. He was knocked out by Matt Mitrione. But, when was the last time you saw Derek Lewis put away easily? It really doesn't happen. And Francis Ngannou, the crazy power, the crazy strength. But quite frankly, given the line, I'm pretty tempted to put a small wager on Derek Lewis to get that underdog knockout. It's hard to predict what Francis Ngannou is going to do coming off that title loss to Stipe Miocic, but I don't know. I saw that line, and at 3-1, I'm going to go ahead and take Derek Lewis by a second round TKO.
Justin?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty short. I do think that Francis, is going to get the knockout. I don't know how you can question, Derek Lewis' mentality. The guy, he just retired and he came back. I actually bet him versus, what was it? Mark Hunt. Yeah, and he burned me bad. He was eating fried chicken before the fight. That was just a weird thing right there. He did look good last fight, though. Who did he beat last fight?
Marcin Tybura.
Okay, oh, God, I think I bet Tybura there. I did. Yeah, that was, Tybura was a 1-1 go in the third round, and yeah, Tybura, he's going to be Struve, in a couple of weeks, but, that you can't really trust Tybura anymore. But, Derek Lewis still has, heavy hands, but, he's been knocked out a couple times. I think Sean Jordan got him as well, besides Mitrione. I just think Francis, he needed that L. The dude is my opinion. I think he could be Stipe in a couple of years, maybe. I think he could be Blades in the rematch. He has crazy knockout power. I just think he's going to get the knockout here, in my opinion, in the first round. But I don't blame you, taking the shot on Derek Lewis. The line is definitely off for sure.
So I actually will blame you for taking the shot on Derek Lewis. I think this is Francis Ngannou all day long, man. So you mentioned that Derek Lewis hasn't gone away very easily recently. It is hard to put the guy away, especially early. But then again, has he fought the kind of freak that Francis Ngannou is anytime? I don't know, man. Francis Ngannou, obviously he lost to Stipe, but we're talking about Stipe, the longest reigning heavyweight champion of all time, title defense wise, not Lang's hid that belt away in his closet for years. But yeah, losing to Stipe Miocic, that's it's Stipe Miocic. So I think Francis Ngannou is going to come out here. He's going to bounce back. obviously the UFC has a lot invested in Francis Ngannou, and I think Francis Ngannou has a lot invested in Francis Ngannou, a lot more than I think Derek Lewis has invested in Derek Lewis. I just feel like Derek Lewis isn't all there in this game. I mean, looking back, he retired after that Mark Hunt fight. The guy retired. I mean, we know what to think of these guys that are throwing around the R word. And Derek Lewis, looking at his skill set, I mean, the guy, he pulls off victories against guys that he probably shouldn't pull off victories against. Even makes amazing comebacks. I mean, that fight against Shamil Abdurrahimov, you got to give Derek Lewis all the credit in the world for that one. That one was impressive. I mean, he was just getting smothered, and he came back and smoked the guy late in the fight. And I think that's his path to victory here, is to survive and try to knock Ngannou out in the later rounds. Derek Lewis still packs a lot of power in that third round. I know he didn't knock Roy Nelson out with that shot in the third round, but go back and watch that Derek Lewis fight against Roy Nelson, the final seconds. Derek Lewis threw a punch that had just as much power as if he would have threw it in the first 10 seconds. The guy, for his build, he actually has underrated cardio. And like I mentioned, the Shamil fight, the guy can pull off late victories. So, I mean, for the kind of body type that Derek Lewis has, the guy actually has underrated cardio. And if it does go to that late second to third round, then I do think Derek will have the cardio advantage. I just don't see it going there. We've seen Derek Lewis starched in the first round more than a few times, twice against Sean Jordan, Matt Mitrione. So I think Francis comes out here. I mean, the guy's probably super hungry for a win. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was pegged to be the next greatest heavyweight champion of all time. A huge setback against Stipe, but the guy's hungry. The UFC has a lot invested in him. I think the line is absolutely warranted. He should be around -400 here. So I'm going to go Francis Ngannou, first round knockout. So moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we got Max Blessed Holloway -131 taking on Brian T-City Ortega +121. Number 1 featherweight in the world taking on the number 2 featherweight in the world. Absolutely amazing matchup. Justin, I heard you got another play here, man. So tell the people what's up.
Yeah, man, I got to ride that T-City train, man. I really do think this guy's the best featherweight in the division. I don't think he's going to lose for a long time. I know a lot of people out there are going to be, questioning me for that, because Max is definitely a very good fighter. The guy is, pound for pound, a very good fighter right now. The guy has been the champ for a while, beat all those ass twice. But I just think it's T-City's time, man. I really do. I think that, one thing I like about T-City is that he's always going forward. He's always pressuring because he doesn't have to worry about getting taken down, Honestly, his striking's looked a lot better, too. I mean, I know Edgar, you could say I'm not going to say shinny, but the guy has definitely been in a lot of wars. But did anybody think he was going to knock him out in the first round? His striking looked phenomenal. His striking looked good against Moicano, too. But, I mean, and then Cub Swanson saying yesterday that he was, like he got lucky or something like that. Cub Swanson's an idiot, dude. I mean, we don't have to talk about that. But let's talk about Max. I mean, the Max is definitely, in my opinion, the better striker here. I just don't think, he's a way better striker. I mean, okay, I think he's a good striker, but I think it's close. I think T-City striking is definitely, a develop. But I don't think T-City's dumb. I think he's going to get it to the mat somehow. He didn't have to go for a takedown against Cub. I know Cub's been tapped out like 100 times, but I think somehow he's going to hurt him on the feet and get a submission. But, I mean, I just don't know how you could fade T-City. I mean, you say the same thing about fading Max, because Max is definitely a good fighter. But, I mean, I don't know, man. They're both really big for the division. I think it's going to be hard for them to make, 145 again. But I just think T-City, man, that you got to ride the train for a long time, man. So my read is that he's going to hurt him on the feet and get a submission. So I got T-City by a sub.
Max?
Seriously, talk about an incredible fight. Arguably one of the best featherweight champions of all time against the true number 1 contender in the division. Gotta love to see this matchmaking here. Brian Ortega coming into his own, man. Really, we've seen an evolution, and that Frankie Edgar knockout really just showed the evolution in his game, and his striking under James Lurson just has really skyrocketed in his last few fights. The only thing I just don't see is Holloway giving him that opportunity. I think Max Holloway is just a little too smart in there. I don't think he's going to give Brian Ortega that opening that he needs to either snatch a limb or land a big shot. And plus, Max Holloway, just talk about the high volume, high output, just constantly pressuring in your face with long strikes. no one's really put that pressure on Brian Ortega, and it's going to be interesting to see how he answers back. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Brian Ortega snatches up another choke, lands a big shot on Holloway, puts him away. But I'm going to go Max Holloway, unanimous decision, and still UFC featherweight champion.
So yeah, I like that price Justin got. I actually think the line is right now with Max Holloway ever so slight favorite. Man, and definitely, yeah, I agree with the money coming in on Brian Ortega because, I mean, how can you fade Brian Ortega? I mean, I can definitely see why people have been waiting to put their money on Max Holloway. I think the line is probably going to get to about near even, and then those Holloway bettors will probably come in, and the line will end up closing close to where it is now. But man, yeah, how can you fade Brian Ortega? I mean, the guy's undefeated. He keeps winning fights that people think he won't win. He burned me against Frankie Edgar. He burned me against Moicano. The guy's so impressive, man, and that striking is getting better and better every fight now. Frankie Edgar was definitely due for a knockout, though. I mean, you talk about a guy who is in so many wars, ate so many big shots. Frankie Edgar was due for a knockout loss. I just didn't think it would come against the jiu-jitsu guy and Brian Ortega, but turns out Brian Ortega is an amazing featherweight. And I'm going to give a little hot take here. I'm going to say whoever wins this fight surpasses Jose Aldo as the greatest featherweight of all time, no matter who wins. Because if you win this fight, I mean, you're the man. You're a pound for pound great. If you go out there and beat Max Holloway, you're the man. If you go out there and beat Brian Ortega, you're the man. But I'm gonna go with Max Holloway, the favorite here, man. I think Brian Ortega, he's due for that first loss. I think he can outstrike Brian Ortega. I think, like Max said, he's a very smart fighter. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He knows exactly what he needs to avoid. I mean, looking back, I mean, I don't want to talk about old fights too much just because his striking has improved, but Brian Ortega typically gets outstriked by almost everyone he's fought. So I definitely don't think he can go out here and outpoint Max on the feet. If he land, I would see it more likely that he lands a huge shot and knocks out Holloway more than outstriking him and winning a points-based decision that way. I'd see a big shot landing more likely. And then when it comes to the jiu-jitsu, I think Max Holloway, I think he can avoid it. Now, Brian Ortega, he's no wrestler by any means, but he showed in that Cub Swanson fight he doesn't need to land takedowns to get submissions. He can land those submissions on the feet. Now, Cub Swanson, like Justin said, has been submitted about 250 times, but I just think Max is he's gonna get the damn thing done here. He's gonna keep it on the feet, and the better striker will win the 5-round striking match. So I'm gonna go with Max Holloway. I'm gonna say he gets this done by I'll say 49-46 decision. I'll give Ortega a round, but if he goes out there and snatches the neck of Max Holloway one way or the other, I cannot say I'll be so surprised. I can see it happening for sure. And like I said, whoever wins this fight is on to an amazing legacy for sure. Even if you lose this fight, you're still the number 2 featherweight in the world. So amazing fight. Looking forward to it so much. Glad I'm passing on it. Glad I can just watch from a betting perspective. When it comes to DraftKings, though, and I haven't talked about DraftKings a whole lot on this card, I actually think for this fight, this is definitely a fight where you want to have a lot of both guys. I think if Brian Ortega wins this fight, it's going to be a submission, early submission. Max Holloway, which of course will get a lot of points. If Max Holloway wins this fight, it's because he's going to be landing hard, high volume on Brian Ortega, which will lead to a lot of points, especially in a 5-round fight. So I think you can't have a lineup in DraftKings without at least one of these guys. And I slightly lean the Holloway side. So, yeah, Max 49-46 decision. So moving on to the next fight of the night here, man. We got Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champ. He's going to be defending that belt against the light heavyweight champion, Daniel DC Cormier. I'm trying to pull the odds up here. There we go. So we got Stipe -230 taking on Cormier +210. I will let Max start out with this one.
Another fight that's a lot closer than the line might suggest. Big power on both sides, especially in the hands of Stipe Miocic. Daniel Cormier, though, very competent striker. I like to say that he's even an underrated striker. He doesn't get a lot of credit for his striking. It's all about the wrestling and the grappling. But, man, he has some good hands, and he puts combinations together well. I just don't know if he's ever kind of been hit by the power that Stipe Miocic has in his hands. And I love the way Stipe Miocic puts his combinations together and really catches his opponents on the end of his punches. And to me, I think his boxing is going to be a little bit too much. Cormier may try to go for takedowns. He may be successful, but Stipe Miocic, more than a competent wrestler and grappler in his own right. I don't know if Stipe can put Daniel Cormier away. He's very durable, but I think the line, the right person is the betting favorite in Stipe Miocic. I think it might be a little bit closer than the line suggests, but I'll go ahead and take Stipe Miocic by 4th round TKO.
Justin?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Max said. I'm also going with Stipe. I don't think he's going to be able to out-grapple DC. I think this fight actually might be on the feet most of the fight, you know. DC has very good hands, very good boxing. I just think Stipe is the better striker. I think Stipe has better boxing, in my opinion. The way he pressures you, you know, he has a very good chin, too. DC has a good chin as well, but like Max mentioned, I mean, he hasn't faced anybody that hits as hard, in my opinion, you know. Stipe is the baddest man on the planet, dude. I mean, say what you want about him. I know I said Francis might beat him in a couple years in the rematch, but, I mean, Stipe's looked so good lately. And, I mean, his boxing's legit, dude. So I don't know if it's going to hit the mat. I don't know who has the advantage if it hits the mat because they're both very good grapplers. But I think Stipe's going to knock him out. And I think it's going to happen maybe in the first or second round. DC's also talking about retirement. He wants to retire, you know, maybe like, 2 more fights. I saw something yesterday. If he loses Stipe, he might retire. Yeah. So who knows what's going to happen? Once, like you mentioned a couple fights ago, once that R word, you know, gets out of your mouth, I mean, it's hard to trust that guy. But I know I bet Volkan versus DC. It's definitely one of the worst bets I've ever had. But this isn't Volkan. This is Stipe. So I got Stipe by a first, second round KO.
What an amazing fight, man. I mean, 2 absolutely amazing stories here. You got Stipe Miocic, who not only is the baddest man on the planet, absolute hero, full-time fighter fire. I mean, the guy he's something else. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his personality as well. I think he's a hilarious guy, and it's so nice to have such he's just such a real dude. Like he's kind of like an everyman's guy. Stipe is huge fan of that guy. And DC, on the other hand, I mean, you got to feel for DC when it comes to his college wrestling career, having to compete against the greatest college wrestler of all time in Cael Sanderson, and now coming to MMA and having to compete against the greatest martial artist of all time in John Jones. I mean, you got to feel for that guy in that aspect. But John Jones did, he made some mistakes. Now he's out of the equation. Daniel Cormier is the rightful, real light heavyweight champion of the world, and now he's coming in facing the baddest man on the planet, Stipe Miocic. And looking at the line, I actually think it should be a little closer, man. I'm going to go with Stipe. I think he should be the favorite, and I am picking him in this fight, but I do think that Daniel is being a little disrespected here. I think when it comes to, I'll talk about the wrestling first. When it comes to the wrestling, I don't think Stipe can take Cormier down. I think Cormier's wrestling is better. The awkward size and build he has, I think he should be able to stuff any takedown Stipe throws if he does go for any. If anything, Daniel will go for the takedowns, and Daniel will get the takedowns. And if he gets on top of Stipe, we know how absolutely pressuring and tiring it can be to have Daniel Cormier on top of you. So I think if Cormier goes in there and takes down Stipe early and wears the guy out a little bit, pressures him up and beats him up on the feet, makes him work on the ground, I think he can tire out Stipe. And I really think Daniel Cormier has a decent shot of winning this fight, but there's some factors that stop me from taking the dog money here on Daniel Cormier. One, Justin mentioned it. He's got the R word floating out there. I don't want to have my money on a guy talking about retirement. 2, the age. Daniel Cormier is getting up there. Stipe, he's in his prime. And 3, the size. Stipe is simply a much bigger guy. He could easily go out there and stuff the takedowns. I wouldn't be surprised either way if Stipe stuffed the takedowns or if Cormier got him down. That's really going to be the telling tale of this fight. If Cormier can get him down, he probably wins. If Stipe stuffs, Stipe probably wins. But yeah, it's just the age, the size, and the retirement word. Those three reasons are those are the sole reasons I'm stopped from taking a dog shot on Cormier here. But I do think it should be lined a little closer. I do think he's being a little disrespected here. So I'm gonna go with Stipe. I'm gonna say he gets it done by a 49-46 decision and extends that heavyweight title defense record to 4 defenses. So it's going to be Stipe 49-46, but do not count out Mr. Daniel DC Cormier. So that's going to do it for us, guys. 12 fights down. I cannot wait for this. Of course, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, tomorrow night I'll be live solo breaking down the tough finale. So just a quick refresher, my 2 plays, 6.2 units on Michael Chiesa and 4 units on Rafael Assunção. Cannot wait. I want to thank these guys very much for coming on. Of course, I'm going to ask them, like I do every time, their prediction for fight of the night and 2 performance bonuses. So I'm going to start out here, man. I'm going to say fight of the night. I'm going to go with the newest one, man. I'm going to go with Paul Felder, Mike Perry. I think that has violence written all over it. It's gonna go down fun either way it goes. I want to see Perry get that upset. Big fan of the guy. So I think that's going to get a fight of the night. And then when it comes to the performance bonuses, I'm going to go with Gokhan Saki to knock out Khalil in the first round, and I gotta go with my boy Michael Chiesa here. I think he surprises a lot of people and finishes Anthony Pettis in the 3rd round via submission. So performance bonuses, Gokhan Saki, Michael Chiesa, fight of the night, Mike Perry, Paul Felder. Justin, what about you?
Yeah, fight of the night, I'm going to have to go with Bora versus Hall. I think that's going to get, crazy and fireworks, in my opinion. That's definitely an underrated fight. Not a lot of people are talking about it. Performance bonuses, I got to go to. My plays, obviously, I'm going to go with Moender and T-City.
Max?
Sleeper pick for Friday night, Gilbert Burns and Daniel Hooker, capping off the UFC Fight Pass prelims. Performance of the night, I think Stipe Miocic wraps one up if he's able to earn a nice performance victory over Daniel Cormier. And then I'll go Paulo Borrachinha Costa, first round TKO. He'll get a $50,000 nice performance of the night bonus there too.
All right, so I want to thank my 2 guests very much for coming on, both on pretty short notice, if I may add. So huge props to Max and Justin for making this a great roundtable. It's been a couple months since the last roundtable, so it was nice to get my feet back in here, and I'm going to try my very hardest to bring one of these for every pay-per-view. So huge props to Justin and Max for coming and bringing the heat and talking these fights with me. I'm going to let them plug away their stuff. I highly recommend it, man. Sharp MMA minds. So Max, where can they find you, man?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Trademark MMA. Do a lot of writing and editing for MMA Today News. Feel free to give me a follow. Check out some of the stuff I have out there. Been doing some live event coverage too. Did the Professional Fight League #2 event a couple weeks back in Chicago. Looking forward to doing some more live event coverage coming up.
Justin, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, man, you can follow me on Twitter at UFC Bro Picks. You can follow me on MMA Tips at Bro Picks, and yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. I can't wait to be on another roundtable. First time doing it with Max, it was fun. He definitely knows his stuff, and I can't wait to cash this weekend.
All right, so I want to thank the viewers very much. Appreciate you guys coming out, especially you live viewers. I think we peaked at around 40. So huge props to you guys, especially you guys in the chat there. I'm sorry I wasn't able to talk to any of you guys, but it's a lot of work to run these things, so I'm a little busy doing little things. But yeah, appreciate you guys very much. Of course, subscribe to the channel. I have not missed a card breakdown since September 2016 was my first one. Haven't missed one since, so subscribe. Comment below. I want to know who all you guys are betting on. I mean, and not even just for this card. Tell me who you guys are betting on for the tough finale. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Follow me on Twitter at MMAKelton. I'm down to talk fights with just about anybody. Hit the like button. That just takes about 2 seconds. So appreciate that very much. Thank you guys so much. And most importantly, enjoy these fights.